Healing after Katrina, President George W. Bush visits New Orleans 10 years after the hurricane devastated the city. On-air shooting, we're learning more about the gunman who killed a reporter and cameraman on live TV. Abuse scandal. A former Holy See ambassador accused of child abuse dies in the Vatican. Francis fever. We hit the streets of D.C. to get the buzz on the Holy Father's upcoming trip to the nation's capital. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, August 28th, 2015. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Jason Calvi in for Brian Patrick with your news now. Hurricane Katrina is the single most catastrophic natural disaster in U.S. history. That's according to FEMA. Tomorrow marks 10 years since the powerful storm made landfall. Suzanne LaFranchi has more about the emotional anniversary. Suzanne?
Jason, it's a very solemn time for the folks along the Gulf. The monster storm was costly in the loss of lives and destruction. Today, President Bush returned to New Orleans to salute emergency responders. He said the anniversary is a good time to reflect on the disaster. President Bush returns to the scene of one of his presidency's lowest points, but he focused on the generosity of Americans.
The 10th anniversary is a good time to honor courage and resolve. It's also a good time to remember how blessed we are to live in such a compassionate nation.
Hurricane Katrina was a Category 3 storm with 127-mile-per-hour winds. It caused major damage to the Gulf Coast and breached the levees of New Orleans. Nearly 2,000 people died. Video of desperate residents seeking refuge dominated news coverage. Katrina came to symbolize government failure. Yesterday, President Obama addressed hundreds of residents in the lower 9th Ward, one of the hardest hit areas.
Because of you, the people of New Orleans working together, this city is moving in the right direction.
Obama acknowledged much remains to be done. The government spent $140 billion on rebuilding after the disaster, yet areas of the city still suffer from high rates of poverty. New Orleans resident Christine Slack is moving to Houston.
I don't know if it's the struggle of what happened after Katrina, but people don't care anymore. And it's hard to really feel at peace at home. It's just not the same. It's not, New Orleans got washed away.
Stephen Bucci of the Heritage Foundation tells me that FEMA still spends hundreds of millions of dollars a month in ongoing construction along the Gulf. He says progress is being made, but Jason, it will continue to be very slow.
Thank you, Suzanne. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Virginia medical officials say a TV news reporter and cameraman killed during a live broadcast both suffered gunshot wounds to the head. We don't know how many times Allison Parker and Adam Ward were shot in the attack, but we are learning more about the shooter. New details are emerging about Vester Flanagan. He's the former TV reporter who shot and killed a reporter and cameraman in Virginia. It happened during a live broadcast Wednesday. Mall owners replaced the boards where Allison Parker and Adam Ward were murdered. Former co-workers recall Flanagan's angry outbursts. The news director of WDBJ, when Flanagan was fired 2 years ago, talked about him, who was known on air as Bryce Williams.
Bryce seemed to have a long history that predates his time at WDBJ of being a professional victim. He was victimized by everything and everyone and could never quite grasp the fact that he was the common denominator in all of these really sometimes serious interpersonal conflicts that he had with people, that he was the source of it.
Another news director, Don Schaefer of XETV in San Diego, says things started out well when he hired Flanagan in 1999, but it went downhill.
He was threatening people, had some physical confrontations with a couple of people, and at one point became such a distraction that we finally had to terminate him.
Around Flanagan's childhood home in Oakland, California, people tell a different story. Among them, high school friend Chris Dobbins.
That was so out of his character for what he was. Such a nice guy. Everybody was friends with everybody.
Flanagan's cousin, Guynell Smith, didn't want to appear on camera. She says she knew Flanagan as a normal kid.
Honestly, I can't say because, you know, if you haven't seen a person in a long time, you know, people change. So I don't know, but when I knew him, he wasn't like that.
Flanagan took his own life while fleeing police on Wednesday, hours after he killed Adam Ward and Allison Parker. And pressure is growing on Guatemala's president to resign as business and government offices close. Thousands of protesters took to the streets in Guatemala yesterday, urging Otto Perez Molina to step down. He's facing a fraud scandal involving bribes funneled to officials. But Perez says he won't resign. Guatemala's bishops say the president should reconsider that decision. The United Nations is urging authorities to crack down on the migrant smuggling trade and to expand safe, legal ways for refugees to reach Europe. The call comes after 71 migrants being smuggled into Austria were found dead in a refrigerated truck. Today, the Italian Coast Guard released this video showing nearly 270 migrants being rescued off the coast of Libya. UN officials say about 200 migrants are missing and feared dead after 2 smuggling boats capsized there. The Vatican is encouraging the faithful to take part in Eucharistic adoration on the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation. That takes place for the first time on Tuesday. Pope Francis is following the Orthodox custom of celebrating creation on September 1st. The Vatican's former ambassador to the Dominican Republic, who was accused of sex abuse, has died. The Vatican press office says Josef Wesolowski was found dead in the room where he has been held on house arrest for several months. He's the highest-ranking Holy See official to ever be charged with sexually abusing young boys. The Vatican says the death appears to be from natural causes. We go now to our correspondent, Alan Holdren in Rome, who has more. Alan, what can you tell us about this case?
Well, Wesolowski had already been defrocked after a canon law trial. He was facing a civil law trial that would have possibly led also to jail time. Now, this was seen by many as a way for the Vatican, for the Pope in particular, to make good on pledges to crack down on sex abusers, on priests, and in this case, a bishop, and also those who had systematically covered up cases of abuse by priests. This possibility of broadening the scope of the Wesolowski trial in particular was made possible by a broadened procedure also from Benedict XVI in the canon law that was carried out and is being implemented by Pope Francis now.
Alan, what were the charges against Wesolowski?
Wesolowski was said to be in possession of enormous quantities of child pornography. He was called back to the Vatican in 2013 after rumors circulated in the Dominican Republic that he had made solicitations of shoeshine boys on the Santo Domingo waterfront, there the capital of the Dominican Republic. This is a particularly delicate issue because he was the top representative from the Vatican, of the Pope, to the Dominican Republic. He was also ordained both a priest and a bishop by St. John Paul II himself.
Is there any evidence of foul play? I mean, will the Vatican release more information about the death?
The Vatican press office said today that there was no indication that he had died of anything but natural causes. The Vatican prosecutor, Jason, has ordered an autopsy. The press office will release information about that as soon as they have it.
Thank you very much, Alan Holdren in Rome. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Jason.
Coming up, the Islamic State destroys an ancient temple. We hear from an expert who's just back from the Middle East. And we talk with a conservative scholar about the future of the marriage debate. Today we celebrate the feast of St. Augustine, Bishop and Doctor of the Church. After leading a wild life, he converted and became one of the Church's greatest writers and philosophers. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Jason Calvi, in for Brian Patrick. Iraq's Prime Minister orders the military to prepare to open Baghdad's Green Zone to all civilians. The area is home to the U.S. and British embassies, along with Iraqi government offices. Opening up the Green Zone would ease traffic jams, making it easier for residents of Baghdad to travel from one side of the congested capital to the other. It would also improve access to services that are only available inside, such as applying for visas at foreign embassies. Iraq formally took control of the zone from the U.S. military at the start of 2009. This week, ISIS destroyed an ancient temple in the Syrian city of Palmyra. It's the latest in a campaign to destroy historic sites across Iraq and Syria. ISIS has looted and destroyed ancient buildings and artifacts across the region. This has horrified historians and academics around the world. Dr. Katharyn Hanson is a fellow with the Penn Cultural Heritage Center, and you just returned from the Middle East. What did you see over there?
I did. I saw a region that's really struggling with protecting their cultural heritage, and I also saw really brave colleagues who are working to protect that heritage.
And you work as an archaeologist focusing on protecting important historical sites around the world. Is anything can be done in Iraq and Syria to protect these sites?
We can support our colleagues. We can make sure we raise awareness. And the other really important thing that we can do is make sure that we're not accidentally encouraging the theft and looting of cultural objects from Syria and Iraq. So making sure that you aren't accidentally purchasing or collecting artifacts that come from that region. So right now before the Senate, there's a bill to restrict the import of Syrian cultural material. And we'll look for that hopefully to come to the floor this fall.
Very interesting, and please keep us abreast on that. We do have a few images I want to look at of looted sites. Can we look at those, and if you could tell us what we're looking at here in this image?
So what you're seeing here is the site called Dura Europos, and that is a site in Syria that's under ISIS control. And Dura Europos has just sustained enormous looting. A lot of that has been fueled because ISIS is issuing permits to folks to go out and loot. And then they're collecting a tax on the objects that have been pulled out, which means they're benefiting financially from everything that comes out of the ground. Not only are they destroying this ancient site, but they're also ruining any future research that we could have there. And Dura Europos is a site that has some of the oldest preserved religious material. So it's got the oldest preserved wall painting of Jesus Christ. It has one of the oldest and best preserved synagogues in the world. And it also has one of the oldest and best preserved temples to Zeus there. And what you've got at Dura Europos is this classical period site that is now just reduced to Swiss cheese because of ISIS.
So it's been completely destroyed?
Yeah.
Wow, it's unbelievable. Is this unprecedented? If you look in the history of historical sites, has this been done before?
Well, yes and no. No, this is a scale that we really haven't seen in this region before, and you're getting both intentional destruction and then this destruction for profit, for looting. But yes, we have seen this type of damage happen in cultural conflicts, particularly where the group causing the conflict is trying to homogenize religious practice and homogenize daily life so that there's no varying points of practice or discussion. And that means eliminating any site, any physical manifestation of a differing voice or a different opinion.
So sad, but thank you for bringing that to us, to our attention, Dr. Hanson. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's been 2 months since the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage across the nation. Since then, there have been several cases of Americans refusing to take part in same-sex weddings. The attorney for a Kentucky county clerk, Kim Davis, is taking action. He now says he'll file an emergency petition with the Supreme Court to delay an order requiring Davis to issue marriage licenses. That order is set to take effect Monday. Davis cites her Christian faith for denying the licenses. And our Brian Patrick spoke earlier with one of the conservative movement's best-known faces who says the marriage debate is far from over.
Dr. Ryan Anderson is a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. His new book is Truth Overruled: The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom. So, Ryan, the High Court has redefined marriage legally for all 50 states. Right. Is the marriage battle lost?
Not at all. We're in the same situation that the pro-life movement was in 42 years ago after Roe v. Wade. And all of the talking heads, all of the elites said, well, you lost and it's over. The Supreme Court has ruled in Roe. The abortion issue is settled. We now know that wasn't the truth. And the reason it's not the truth is that 42 years ago, there were people who fought back. There were people who said, no, the Supreme Court doesn't get the last word about this. The Supreme Court's ruling had no basis in the Constitution. It told a lie about the Constitution. It told a lie about unborn children. We need to say the same thing right now. The Supreme Court's ruling had no basis in the Constitution. It lied about the Constitution, and it lies about marriage. Marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and just because Anthony Kennedy and 4 other justices say otherwise doesn't make it so.
Yeah, legal doesn't necessarily mean right. We as people of faith know what marriage is. How are we impacted by this ruling?
Yeah, so already we're seeing the consequences for religious liberty. You know, I think this ruling is going to have consequences both for marriage, for children, and for religious liberty, but we're going to experience the religious liberty ones first. We heard during oral arguments the Solicitor General say that the nonprofit tax status of Catholic schools and charities is going to be an issue. And 2 days after the court ruled, the religion columnist for the New York Times ran an op-ed at Time magazine saying, now's the time to revoke nonprofit status to religious institutions. We've seen the bakers, the florists, the photographers have all been penalized thousands of dollars, most recently $135,000 for declining to help celebrate a same-sex wedding.
So we are in a position where we want to clearly defend marriage. How do you suggest we do it?
Yeah, so what I do in this book is I come at it from the perspective of philosophy, from natural law and social science, to make a secular argument about marriage. Because you're right, people of faith know what they believe about marriage. The Bible reveals it, the church teaches it. But what do you do with your secular neighbor, your secular colleague? So I help make a public argument. Marriage is about uniting a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, a mother and a father. Why is this? It's based on an anthropological truth that men and women are distinct and complementary. It's based on a biological fact that reproduction requires both a man and a woman. It's based on a social reality that children deserve both a mother and a father. That explains the nature of marriage and why governments in the marriage business. Otherwise, marriage is just consenting adult romance. It can come in as many different sizes and shapes as consent is possible.
You speak on this all over the country. How is your message being received?
Many people are saying it's the first time they've heard a rational argument about marriage. It's the first time they've heard a philosophical argument about marriage. Both people who agree with me and who disagree with me. You know, I'll have people at Harvard and Yale law schools say, look, we disagree with you, but it's the first time we've heard a rational argument defending traditional marriage. And from other students, they say, well, I always knew it in my heart, but I never knew how to articulate the law that's written on my heart.
It's good reading. Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom. Dr. Ryan Anderson, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. And thanks to Brian Patrick for that discussion. Up next, Pope and President. We preview next month's meeting between the two world leaders, and EWTN Love. One of our own gets married and receives a special papal blessing. It doesn't make a difference how many people God loves. He loves you as if no one else existed. A Friday fact from Mother Angelica. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Jason Calvi. Pope Francis will make a historic visit to the White House next month. Common ground between the pontiff and the president could be on display. Obama has made no secret of his affection for the outspoken Pope, calling him a transformative leader. But there are deep differences between the two on issues such as abortion and marriage. Obama and the Pope, however, are expected to focus on areas of agreement. Dr. Matthew Bunson joins us from Catholic Distance University. Now, the White House says that issues like economic opportunity, immigration, protection of religious minorities will be on the agenda. Do you think the Pope's going to throw any curveballs this time around?
Well, this is Pope Francis. We can always expect some kind of a curveball. I think if there are questions that are asked on the South Lawn when Francis is there, there'll be a great opportunity for him to throw a few surprises to the president. I think, though, for Francis, he's going to be focusing in his discussions on something that we've just been hearing about in this show, and that's religious liberty. He has talked, especially in his recent trips to South America, to Ecuador, Paraguay, and Bolivia, about the importance of faith, the role of faith in culture. I think that's something he's going to be bringing up here as well, and that could come as a bit of a surprise to this administration.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. The last time they met, the White House said they hadn't discussed any social issues in detail, but the Vatican said they spoke about religious freedom and life issues. Do you think those may be at play?
I think definitely. Francis has made a touchstone for a lot of his speeches now, his homilies, Laudato Si, his encyclical on the environment. So yes, they're going to have a lot of common ground in the area of the environment, of ecology, but Francis is going to take that one step further. As Francis said in his encyclical, you cannot be for the environment and not be for life. So life issues, I think, are going to be there because he sees it as part of integral ecology, that whole idea of the natural environment being so closely tied to the human environment. And that, I think, will make a very lively discussion, certainly behind closed doors.
Maybe uncomfortable as well at Congress when he speaks, when he brings up both issues. Can you give us a preview of what he might say there?
Yeah, when he's talking to Congress and then he's talking to the UN, the two key words, I think, for him will be common good. That's at the heart of Laudato Si, and it's been at the heart of his message for a number of months now. When he's talking about the common good to Congress, he's going to be talking about the role that the United States has to play in bringing about the environmental work that we need, but also on issues of immigration, as well as the need for America to remember that religious liberty, the role of faith. And then I think he's going to touch on immigration as a real global phenomenon. This is something that Francis has a wide vision in seeing. The hundreds of millions of people are on the move. We just heard that tonight in the news. Francis sees this as something that the United States has to participate in. And it's going to touch quite a few hot buttons here in the U.S.
Hot button issues for sure. Any prediction of how the White House is going to handle that, or Congress as well?
I expect that we're going to be hearing a lot of dancing from one side, other sides trying to co-opt that message, but that's what politicians do.
Let's move on. After Washington, the Pope will then head to the UN, which you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Any preview of particularly what he's going to address there?
Yeah, absolutely. That phrase "common good" is going to reemerge, I think, when he talks to the UN. The role of global cooperation in solving the ecological and environmental problems of facing the planet. He's also going to talk, I think, about the financial situation, disparities between the developed world and the developing world. And then I think he's going to talk something that is very important to him. And that is the human trafficking that he's called a wound on civilized society. The church has been one of the leading forces in the world in helping to curb and to end the pernicious practice of human trafficking, tied as it is to the wider immigration issue and also to the environmental issue. So common good is a theme that's going to touch on a host of different issues, and I think Francis is going to weave all of them together in a very profound way.
Just less than a month, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Dr. Bunson, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
God bless.
In 25 days, Pope Francis will make that historic first visit to the United States. Today, Mark Irons talked with people about the Pope's first stop, our nation's capital.
The streets of D.C. will soon see a Pope in traffic.
I think it's really cool that he gets to come here and just say hi to everyone.
Here at the White House, the Pope will sit down with President Obama. If you were the Pope, what would you say to the President?
How are you going to fix this country?
Among his other stops, Francis will meet bishops for prayer and visit the Capitol. The Pope will be addressing a joint meeting of Congress. Are you excited about the Pope coming?
Yeah, for sure.
And he'll meet with the homeless at Catholic Charities.
He's for the poor people, so he doesn't come with a big event.
But thousands will attend Mass here, so if you don't like crowds,
I'll probably watch it on TV.
The Pope's visit even has kids talking.
It's definitely amazing.
Some weren't expecting this holy guest.
You know, I wasn't even aware that he's going to be here.
But in general, D.C. seems ready for Francis.
I think we're very interested in the Pope and everything that's happening.
In D.C. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks, Mark. And finally tonight, we want to congratulate Andreas Durin, a member of our team in Rome. Andreas, our cameraman, and his bride Elisa got married in July. This week, they got to greet Pope Francis at the general audience. Alicia kissed the Holy Father's hand. Afterwards, the happy couple celebrated at a local Roman cafe down the street from our bureau. Congratulations, Andreas and Alicia, from the entire News Nightly team. Until Monday, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Jason Calvi. Good night, and God bless.